At the DC, we're live streaming today. I do want to thank everybody. This is our 7th roundtable PDA's organized. We're going to be going live in how long, Peter? A couple minutes. We're going to be going live. Our hope today, we have a number of members who have indicated they're allot some time to be with us, and we're honored that Keith is with us 2 in a row. There are those that talk the talk, and those are those that walk the walk. So our hope here this morning, once we get the word from Peter, we're live. We'd like to go around and allow each of you just 30 seconds to a minute, if you could please, to introduce yourselves, let folks know who you are, organization you represent, and if there's a particular shout out, but if you can, please, it's difficult with a room full of activists, no more than a minute or two. We do have a pretty tight agenda. We're going to try to accommodate everybody. We know of a few add-ons, but if you could pay close attention to the agenda, we'll try to move as quickly as we can. In addition to Congressman Ellison, we've heard from both Congressman Mike Capuano, who will be joining us, Congressman Jim McGovern, and Congressmember Alan Grayson. Part of our strategy here this morning, or this afternoon, is to talk not only about what we can do, but also to do a few little victories. And one of those little victories when we were here last time was to ask Mr. Ellison if he would put some heat behind the caucus to do some work on single payer. That while the Affordable Care Act was being rolled out, and while many of us were watching some of our own Democrats in name only voting to repeal, we were asking when the CPC would step it up, and we're going to have that conversation a little bit later when other members come. But I do want to just announce 2 little victories. It's sometimes when you're inside the Beltway, that you're not able to announce those. And the first is our goal to get 10 new members onto 676, either members that were on previously or would come back on. And last Wednesday, 237 members of Congress were visited by activists around the country with a letter asking members to come on board, not only on 676, but as everybody knows, the Robin Hood tax, and we'll hear more about that from Keith and Michael Lighty, but also John Conyers' jobs bill. On Wednesday, not even a CPC member, Loretta Sanchez, came back on board to 676, so we want to acknowledge that. And when he comes through the door, we just got word about 15 minutes ago, probably because he was going to come here at some point today, but Congressman Mike Capuano also has come back on board now, 676. So those are some of the big news that we want to start with. But now what we'd like to do, if we could, now we're up. Are we ready to go, Peter? Is to go around again to welcome those of you who are watching and those of you in the room, to introduce yourself and let folks know who you are and what brings you to the table. I'm Tim Carpenter. I'm with Progressive Democrats of America, and I believe in my lifetime we can elect a progressive Democratic majority and see Speaker Ellison in our lifetime. And I'm glad to be here.
I'm Andrea Miller. I'm part of the PDA national team, and I lead the ERA 3-state strategy issue team.
I'm Steve Schaff, Vice Chair Emeritus of the PDA's Advisory Board.
I'm Liz Schuster. I'm with Food and Water Watch. I'm the Legislative and Policy Analyst.
I'm Miriam Pemberton, Institute for Policy Studies. I work on defense transition assistance and a critical piece of getting military spending cuts that we need.
Dave Sterrett, Healthcare Council for Public Citizen, and Congressman Ellison. We've met with Jackie Regis before, so good to see you again. And we are actually working with Congressman Conyers and a number of other groups here for July 31st, a single-payer event tied to the Medicare anniversary. We have a schedule of events on the table outside, but 1 p.m. there's a press conference at the House Triangle. We'd love to have you there, Congressman. And I also putting in a plug for my latest blog on the royal baby and what it shows for single payer. So we have that outside too. The cost for the royal baby was $15,000. It's an average $30,000 cost in maternity care in the United States. So any single payer here.
Thanks, Steve. Welcome. Mark?
My name's Mark Dudzik. I'm with the Labor Campaign for Single Payer, and we do exactly what our name says we do. We work to get labor engaged and mobilized around the fight for single payer, and when labor joins it, that's when we're winning. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Laura McCleary. I'm the new Legislative Director for National Nurses United. Michael Lighty, Public Policy Director for National Nurses United, and one of our proudest work we're doing in DC is working with Congressman Ellison on HR 1579, which we think could transform this country. So we're so proud to be here.
We'll be hearing more about that, though. Yes, we will.
Chairwoman with Congressman Ellison.
Peter Aldrich with Congressman Ellison.
I'm Emily Worth. I'm Water Program Director at Food and Water Watch, and we work on a number of food and water issues, but really recognize the growing threat that our common resources are facing and the financialization issues, and that's why we've actually taken on supporting the Robin Hood tax and many other of these essential progressive measures, because we know these are long-term fights, and we believe in organizing at the grassroots level to build a constituency that's going to allow the change that we need over the long term. So I'm happy to be here with allies, national nurses, progressive Democrats. So.
And just one quick shout out too, as far as the connection, we're organized by issue organizing teams. Russell Green was doing a lot of reach and outreach to help bring a lot of the new folks, so it's nice to have new folks at the table this month. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Drew. I'm with Dave from Public Citizen.
Mike Hirsch with the Progressive Democrats of America National Team. I've been focusing a lot on the jobs bill, HR 1000, with the economic and social justice issues.
I'm Molly Salzberg. I'm with Miriam at Institute for Policy Studies and Defense Transition Assistance.
I'm Len Mel. I'm with the campaign for HR 1000 and DSA.
Ross Baldwin with U.S. Action. I have our online communications and outreach, and I want to let folks know that we have a copy of a letter on House appropriations that's literally ongoing right now. 146 national organizations signed on, some 400 state and local groups pushing back against a Republican effort to shift domestic discretionary funds to increase above the sequester cap pending on spending. And thanks to many of the groups here who signed on. I do have a copy of that right.
Steve Collins, PDA.
I'm Mark Levin, PDA with the issue and war issue organization.
Desiree Jordan, PDA, founder of Unite Women New York, PDA New York.
Molly Shakespeare, I'm the Legislative Director for Social Security Works and Strengthen the Social Security Coalition.
Oh, I'm also working with React Radio, and this is the crew that's covering it for the live stream.
Kelly?
Kelly Johnson. I'm with PDA as well, First District, Western Massachusetts.
Mike with Congressman Ellison.
I don't know. Okay. Before we give it back to Keith, we want to thank WEAC Radio for the whole team that's here today. Taking Inside Outside to a whole new level. So for the next hour or so, again, we welcome everybody who's out there with us. We're going to go for about an hour here, and then we're going to close shop a little bit and talk amongst ourselves. But for the first hour, we want to again welcome Congressman Keith Ellison, co-chair of the Progressive Caucus. And we're all yours. Let you kick it off and tell us what it looks like from your vantage point, how the defense discussion may be going this week. And I'm sure you have a few things on your mind to share.
Oh, yeah. Well, Tim, good to see you as always. Good to see everybody in the PDA family and affiliated groups. It is absolutely essential that our advocacy take place across America, but also here in Washington, D.C. It is a partnership as we educate, mobilize, and organize across America, but then put pressure on Congress to do and deliver the things that the American people need. I mean, that's after all what we're supposed to be doing. And in order to achieve those things, it does take pressure. It takes organizing. Politicians see the light when they feel the heat. And if you ever forget that, you will find yourself in a state of confusion. A lot of things to discuss today, three main ones, but I want to set the table. Should I stand up, y'all? Sure. Does that be better? Yeah, and so a few things just to set the table. When we were last together, that was a political moment. We're in another political moment now that is related, but not the same one. Where we are right now is that if we had any suspicions that we would have an intractable House majority that didn't want to do anything of good, they have proven that in spades since that time. They are not calibrating their political positioning toward agreement. they are going in the opposite direction. I'm not being in the least wise inflammatory. This is it. We kind of hoped that given some of the negative reaction they've been receiving, the low esteem the people of America have Congress in, and the just inability to pass anything through Congress might make them a little bit more amenable. That is not the case. Last week we had Obamacare up for another repeal vote for the 38th time. The 17th time I understood what they were trying to say. I got the point at the 26th time, 38th time, wow. So there's that. This morning I was at a markup in the Financial Services Committee. Don't want to go into this, we just want to give you a little flavor of where we're at. They introduced a bill and passed with only 3 defections on the Republican side that would literally get rid of the 30-year fixed rate mortgage that is affordable. And they say there will be 30-year fixed rate mortgages, yeah, but only rich people will be able to get them because you'll have to put 35% down and have a FICO score of 750, and that is going to eliminate a whole lot of Americans. I don't mention that to really dive into it, but just to give you a sense that these people do believe plutocracy is the right model for America, and they are striving earnestly to achieve it every day. But we believe in democracy, so we're not on the same page as them because we're progressive Democrats of America. So let me tell you that today and it is the 24th of July. We have about another. We're wrapping up this week. Then we're going to come back next week, and then we're out for a while after August 2nd. So you guys come in at an opportune time, but you should know that there's a certain degree of crunch time. The issues that are prevailing, and I'm still sort of setting the table, as immigration, and then that's still a very big deal. By no means is immigration in the can, if you understand what I mean. We may go through all this and not get an immigration bill. Much of it will be determined by the level of fortitude, advocacy, and just broad determination of the people who want comprehensive immigration reform, me being just one among many. But when we get back, there's going to be a number of things on the plate. One is going to be this debate around tax reform. Republicans have said they want to lower the number of loopholes and lower the rates. They've argued for budget neutrality. Now, if they argue that, we will continue to suffer under the sequestration cuts that we have seen this year, $85 billion. The interesting thing about sequestration is that it wasn't one big massive hit all at once. Sequestration, the way it has taken effect and hurt Americans, is it's hurt Americans who need government services more, like people who need Meals on Wheels and Head Start. And where it has hit middle class people, like with the Federal Aviation Administration, we came back and we fixed it. But we have massive layoffs for civilian employees at DOD. The pain is being felt, but it's not massive all at once to people who are politically connected. It's dribs and drabs to the politically disconnected. So politically, these people are not in a frame of mind where they're talking about shifting sequestration. But I believe that is going to come to an end because we are going to see cuts that are going to affect the whole country, Republicans too. Now, ordinarily, they would not want to do a financial transactions tax. They just wouldn't want to do it because they don't want any taxes. They don't want the government to have any money because if the government has money, the government might help an American. And that's not what they want to see happen. So they don't want to do that. But they may have to do that given the exigencies of the moment. And the financial transactions tax, I believe, has a chance of viability in the context of the debate that we see coming up in the fall on tax reform. I don't need to lecture you all on how good of an idea the Inclusive Prosperity Act is, but if you give me a minute, I'll give you a few reasons why I think so. It's a tiny fee that can generate as much as $350 billion a year in revenue, and it allows us to invest in things that really matter. Education, roads, housing, bridges, wealth, health care for seniors, things like that. 40 countries had a similar tax, as did the US up until 1966. And it's more than a simple revenue generator. It is a market regulator in that financial transaction tax will slow down these highly, these erratic flash trades, these algorithmic driven trades where literally millions of trades are taking place over a very short period of time, not based on somebody sitting down analyzing a stock or the value of a company, but just, you know, just a mathematical trigger point, and then all these trades happen. If they're more expensive to make, even in an infinitesimal way, there will have to be more care and attention. This will help the markets operate in a more sensible way. You know, people like George Soros, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Paul Krugman, Joe Stiglitz, Jeffrey Sachs, Dean Baker, Robert Poland, Larry Summers have all said they support a transaction tax. And so the bottom line is we're not broke. There's plenty of money. It's just the government doesn't have it. The government has a right. The government and the people of the United States have a right to run the programs of the United States. Health, welfare, housing, all these things. And the people who benefit from being here have a duty and obligation to help support it. So we make that case, and we make it strenuously. Now, Europe has been looking. More than 30 countries, including Australia, Hong Kong, Switzerland, currently have some form of a FTT. And this year, 11 European nations will implement an FTT, financial transaction tax, which would raise as much as $74 billion for them. By the way, if you're watching, the G20 recently made some statements regarding the economic path of austerity. They're rejecting it. They now recognize the folly of an austerity path, and I say we need to do some investment and expansion, which was what the United States was doing, but we stopped doing, and we better get back at it. Of course, if you want to do investment and expansion, you need some money, and that's where a transaction tax can be helpful. These 11 countries, represent two-thirds of the European Union economy: Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Belgium, Estonia, Greece, Austria, Portugal, Slovenia, Slovakia, and a 0.1% stock in bonds and 0.01% on derivatives. They can raise a lot of money. And by the way, the London Stock Exchange imposes 0.5% tax, which raises about $30 billion a year in an economy which is very substantial. So the fact is, this is a good idea. And we need to press it. And we're working on gaining signatures every day. We're working on it more and more every day. I don't have a count for you, but it's something we're pressing, and we're talking about it, and it's an idea that has some currency. Several other members of Congress are toying with a financial transaction tax. This one, the Inclusive Prosperity Act, is the best model. But here's the thing about that. They're open to the idea. So we're not trying to persuade them transaction tax or not. We're saying, okay, now we all agree on a transaction tax. Which one? Which is a better and easier place to be to sell the program? So that's what I want to say about that. I see a hand right there.
Quick question, Congressman. So now that Chairman Baucus and Ranking Member Hatch have asked for recommendations from senators to revamp the tax code, is there a senator that's willing to submit the idea of the Robin Hood tax to them?
Let me tell you, I have it on good authority that there is.
Right.
But the person who has advised me of this has not released me to discuss it.
Stay tuned.
But I just want to tell you that there's at least one senator and perhaps more who feel that this is a viable idea, who who recognize the fact that we need an offensive strategy,
Yeah.
and that the transaction tax is politically something that is very attractive, because people know that we bailed out Wall Street. They resent the fact we didn't bail them out, and people feel like, we got some comeback coming back, right? And so it's time for patriotic companies to do what's right by America. If you do well in America, you should do right by America. How about that for a change? It's a little patriotism. Crazy idea. So there's that. I want to now move to voting rights. Yes. Now, the Progressive Caucus is very clearly focused on issues of democracy. This is why over 2 years ago, we joined with progressives all over this country in calling for the repeal of the Citizens United, and actually, part of that whole move, part of the whole Move to Amend movement, and we're engaging local governments to pass resolutions to this effect. We came together with a statement of principles in which we're all Move to Amend. Us members of Congress had our own favorite version, but we came to the very adult position that we don't want to be falling out over fine points and paragraphs and commas when we don't even have the national support to amend. Let's agree on some principles, and let's work the movement across America, and then when the propitious moment arrives, we can fight over where the commas go, right? So that's what we decided. This is a good step forward, because members of Congress love to say, my bill is better than his bill. So, we do that. We do that kind of stuff. So, we're just staying out of that for a moment and saying, we all agree on the basic core principle. So we're part of that, and we're staying part of it. One of the things that we're doing to advance that discussion is we are in support of a bill that John Sarbanes has introduced for campaign finance reform, which would limit the amount of a donation that anyone could give, somewhere in the neighborhood of like $150 to $200. Right now, it's about $2,500 or something like that. Who can give $2,500? People who got a lot of money. And if I am trying to fund my campaign, and somebody can give me $2,500, and this person can give me $25, who am I paying attention to? Who am I running behind? Who am I calling? Who am I sucking up to? I mean, bottom line is, we need to create a campaign finance system that makes the $25 donor an attractive person to talk to. So that's the Sarbanes bill. Mark Buchanan and I have another constitutional amendment which would make the right to vote a constitutional right. It may surprise you to know that right now, you don't have a constitutional right to vote. You have a right to not be discriminated against on the basis of your race or your sex or being 18, or they can't have a poll tax on you. That's unconstitutional. But it's kind of fair game after that. And so when a photo ID, which is nothing but voter suppression, comes along, we're in a defensive posture proving that it's not necessary, whereas they should be trying to prove that it is. And if you had a constitutional right to vote, anything that impinged upon that right would invoke your rights. And so we believe this is an important thing to do. We're fighting for that. Progressive Caucus is on top of that. And then finally, we've been in a series of conversations with both Congressman Conyers and Congressman Stinson about, can we repair Section 4, which was struck. Look, when this thing was reauthorized in 2006, 98 senators voted for it, and there were only 98 senators, so it was 98-0 voted in favor. And in the House, there were 390-some votes and 33 against. Justice Scalia thought this was evidence of non-support or racial entitlement, I believe was his term. This man is hostile to Democratic participation, so fine, we know that. No need to even whine about it. But they did not say that you could never have a Section 4 pre-clearance program. They said the formula need to be reconfigured fine, let's reconfigure it. Maybe there's some northern states that need to be in.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
There are some now. But I just want to say, in case you didn't know, you might be thinking, oh, well, you know, maybe it's not fair to put them on the list and they have to stay there since the 60s. You know, there's an opt-out provision, and counties get out of Section 4 compliance all the time. There's a long list. You can click online and find it. What the Supreme Court did was completely irrational, and within hours of the striking down Section 4, Texas and other states started trying to pass voter suppression. The president says he's going to do stepped up enforcement under Section 2, which is non-discrimination, but we know that every Section 2 case takes on average about 2-3 years. So as they are stealing elections, maybe 2 years from now we'll be vindicated, but it's completely not a satisfactory solution. So voting rights, key issue there. We need to have a big, fat, broad coalition focused on voting rights, and I think it is worth our time as a movement to try to repair and get the repair through Congress of Section 4. But then I think we need to aim high. We need to get a constitutional right to vote. We need to have campaign finance reform. We need to repeal Citizens United, and we need to understand that when they're going after your vote, they're not just going after your vote. They're going after your right to pass legislation to make this a fairer, greener, cleaner, more equal world. They're going after your ability to increase the minimum wage. They're going after your ability to have worker protections. So we've got to be real clear what is on the line. I'm sure everybody here knows what that means. Now, if I may introduce just a few other topics, if it's all right, Tim.
The floor is yours.
We have a movement, people. It is in the low-wage service worker movement is moving. These folks are striking $7.25 an hour workers, striking in New York, striking in Washington, D.C., striking in Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas, striking at Walmart, striking at McDonald's, at Ruby Tuesdays, at all over this country. I'm telling you, they need our support. We need faith groups to say that it's immoral in the richest country in the history of the world, where there's radical abundance for the wealthy, that people are getting paid $7.25 an hour, the lowest minimum wage since 1960s, when accounted for by inflation. Now, you know, if you're making $7.25 an hour and you striking and you're not going to get paid for the day you're not at work, you really need to be striking, right? Your back is against the wall. And by the way, these are people who, hey there, we've just been joined by Jim McGovern. These are people who are feeding families, are buying Pampers and feeding families. And at the same time that the minimum wage has been stuck and stagnant and not moving, they're trying to cut food stamps. And Jim was awesome last week protecting the food stamp program. And imagine this, $196 billion worth of farm subsidies passed through Congress as they cut the nutrition title out of the bill. And then 14 members of Congress voted for it in the Republican caucus, who themselves receive ag subsidy. And George Miller put a report out on this, which, I mean, if they had any shame, they'd be embarrassed. Anyway, the Progressive Caucus, we're on a low-wage worker job tour. I see my friend Mike Capuano just joined us as well. And I just want to say, y'all, I mentioned in the introductory way that we were defending the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage that is affordable yesterday in committee, and Mike Capuano was nothing short of brilliant in his remarks on that front, so please give him another hand. Mike got up there and made a statement, and all the rest of us just said what he said. So anyway, so the Progressive Caucus, we've already been to San Jose, California, fighting for low-wage workers, McDonald's workers. We went to Milwaukee We've been here in DC standing with striking workers at Union Depot, and we have sites in New York City coming up and in July, but also Kansas City and St. Louis, and we'll add more. And we'll have members of the Progressive Caucus there fighting for low-wage workers. Let me tell you, raising the minimum wage is a winning idea. Even it polls extremely high. Even a majority of Republicans support raising the minimum wage. So if that's the thing that you all want to focus on, I think it's a very good idea. Let me say, make a couple of comments as I wrap up, because I know my colleagues are waiting to talk. One of the things coming up soon is the consideration of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This is a trade deal, and members of Congress cannot order a copy and just read it, because under some rules that have to do with diplomatic right to secrecy, members of Congress can ask about certain provisions in it, certain titles, certain chapters, but we can't just go see the whole thing. So I had a colleague, a constituent, call me and say, I heard about this big Trans-Pacific Partnership. Can you send me a copy? I said, I wish somebody send me a copy. As a member of Congress, we cannot just go read it. It's considered a secret document, and this thing's going to come down in two parts. One is going to be something called Trade Promotion Authority, or so-called fast track. And this is going to be a thing where we literally waive parts of the Constitution, because this is basically a treaty and you need 2/3, and so we're not going to have that. And we're going to waive our right to amend the trade bill. And so they're going to put the Trade Promotion Authority in place. Then they're going to get, and that requires a short period, pretty short time period in which the bill has to come up for a vote, and then it's an up or down vote, no amendments. Now, what we do know about it so far is that it bans Buy American provisions. We know that it contains provisions for single site inspection, which means if the fish is inspected in Vietnam, it is considered inspected until it gets to your table. You feel comfortable with that? No. It's really not a trade bill. A trade bill would say, oh yeah, Americans make goods and services. People in Vietnam make goods and services. Let's see what we could do. We'll buy some stuff y'all have, you buy some stuff we have. This is really more of a investor race to the bottom bill, which seeks out the lowest paid workers, usually low paid because they're exploited by authoritarian government, and then we make stuff there and then sell it to Americans. Now, this thing, I can tell you, last year they told us how great the South Korea trade deal was going to be. We already lost, we know, 40,000 jobs because of South Korea, and it's a very short period of time. They were supposed to be, our cars go in there, their cars come in here, everybody wins. No, they won. And the investors won, but the American people didn't. And if you want to ask yourself, why are our wages stagnant for 30 years? There's a lot of ingredients to it. One of them is these bad trade deals. So Trans-Pacific Partnership, be on the alert for this thing, study about it, think about it. Not enough time to tell you all about it, but it is coming your way. And then the last point I want to make, and I do know you guys asked about single payer. We are absolutely dedicated to single payer. We are talking about how to reinvigorate the single payer movement. But I just wanted to mention before I take my seat that the continuing resolution that funds the government is going to expire in October. And the Republicans have said, well, if you want us to keep funding the government, we need some stuff. And there's a senator from Utah that said the stuff he needs is to defund the Affordable Care Act. You see what I'm saying? These folks are setting up a government shutdown. We need a strategy, a response, an affirmative position on what we're going to do about it, and we need our people to know that this is what they're angling for, because time-wise, we got a few more weeks before the August recess. We're going to come back, and then we got 9 days we're going to be in September, and then we're going to be in October, and the CR is going to be right on, and you're going to feel like, wow, what the heck? Where'd this all come from? Well, it's brewing now. And so we've got to, as a movement, be clear on what we're going to do about this looming, threatened government shutdown on top of this already failed austerity movement. So with that, enough talking from me. I'll be happy to respond to questions later. Thank you all.
before you run away, thank you. The strength of these meetings has been your staff as well as your participation. I wonder if you could just take a second to share with those that are watching. Many of us have been on conference calls with many of your staff who are in the room today, whether it be the Robin Hood tax for voting rights. If you could, the folks out in the live stream, introduce your team to our team, and this is where it happens, making those connections.
This is where the magic happens. So come on over here, Carol. Carol Wayman knows a lot about financial services, and she helps us stay on top of that kind of stuff. So this is Carol Wayman. Give her a hand. Can you get a camera on Mike right there? Mike is a communications leader, and he helps form message and get it out. Thank you, Michael. Now, Brad Bauman. That's right. Now, Brad Bauman is the executive director of the Progressive Caucus. He's not here right now because he's working hard. But let me tell you, Brad is a ubiquitous guy, energetic, works hard all the time, heart as big as all outdoors. He never stops. And Haley from the Progressive Caucus, she's a communications fellow, and she's doing a great job. So we don't do anything without good staff, and we're in their debt. And thank you, Tim.
Thanks.
All right. Oh, and Peter the intern is here.
Always the last one. Thank you, Team Ellison. Carol was, those of you who are watching, remember on our last conference call going into our letter drops, Carol was the one who briefed us, and we thank you for that. Those of you who may not remember, on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, 237 congressional offices were visited. Many of those folks watching today who can't be with us as part of our letter drop. And Carol was on us on that call. When we gathered here last month, if you remember, there was a looming fight that was coming up, and it wasn't a staffer who got on that phone call, but it was a Congress member, Jim McGovern, who got on that call and warned us about the attacks on the food stamp program, and a lot has happened since then. But again, 200 activists took to congressional offices, and we also did what we called street heat demonstrations. When we asked Jim where the Democratic leadership was, he said at that time they were quiet. And we went out and we visited Congresswoman Wasserman and Congresswoman Pelosi in Steny Hoyer's office to ask them where they were. And we're going to ask Jim to update us on that fight. And before we do that, I want to bring him up, as well as people think it's a home rule here, the Massachusetts delegation. In addition is Mike Capuano. We're going to bring both of them up together because they're on tight schedules. And as you heard, the fight on 676, the only two members of the Massachusetts delegation now on 676 as of this morning are Mike Capuano and Jim McGovern on 676. I want to bring them both up. However you want to divide your time up between yourselves.
I'll be very brief because between a rules meeting, an immigration meeting, and something else.
Another slow day on the hill.
So I want to talk just a little bit about the Farm Bill and SNAP. First of all, I want to thank all of you and those who are watching. We talked a few weeks before the Farm Bill. You said you were going to mobilize people. You did. Offices all around the country were visited, were called. People knew that there was a movement out there that was absolutely against gutting the SNAP program, which is the new name for food stamps. You should also know that our leadership was spectacular during the debate. Nancy Pelosi gave an incredible speech, a passionate speech in defense of the program and against the cuts. Steny Hoyer, our minority whip, did the same. Gave a very, very strong and impassioned plea that all Democrats, indeed all members of the House, should not support the draconian cuts that the Republicans were proposing and should not support taking the nutrition bill and just tossing it aside. And that's exactly what the Republicans did. Every single Democrat voted against the last Farm Bill, which took the nutrition title out of the Farm Bill. And I think that is a significant statement in and of itself. There was unity. And I was really proud of the Democratic caucus. And I think we owe a lot of that gratitude to you for pushing Democrats to act like Democrats, to stand up for programs that benefit the needy and benefit the poor. And so we narrowly lost that vote. And right now the Farm Bill is in limbo. We're told that Eric Cantor is going to draft his own version of a nutrition title, which will be lousy, all right? We all know that. And we have to be prepared for that. We have to get ready to defeat that. We also have to worry about what they might do to SNAP in the continuing resolution and the appropriations process. Because these guys not only want to cut the program, they want to end it as we know it. You know, a lot of the Republicans that voted against the original Farm Bill thought that the $20 billion cut, which would have thrown 2 million people off the program, hundreds of thousands of kids off of a free breakfast and lunch program, was too little. They wanted like $100 billion cut. And others wanted to block grant the whole program. Essentially, they want to end SNAP as we know it. So let me just say this. One of the things that I love about PDA is you stand up for the little guy. And that's what government's all about. I mean, if we're not about being there for people who are vulnerable, then I don't know what the hell we're here for. Donald Trump doesn't need us. But somebody who's unemployed or somebody who's working full-time and earning so little that they still qualify for SNAP, they need us. And I also think that food ought to be a right in this country. Nobody in the richest country in the world should have to wonder where their next meal is going to come from. I mean, we're the richest, most prosperous nation in the world. We have 50 million people who are hungry, 17 million who are kids. We should all be ashamed. You know, and we're also pushing the White House to do a White House conference on food and nutrition, because I really think we could solve this problem. And solving the problem of hunger is more than SNAP. That's just one tool in the anti-hunger toolbox. We need a plan to end hunger in this country. And I would tell people that hunger is a political condition. We have the food, we know what to do, we need better coordination, we need a more concerted sense of urgency, we need a plan. It can be solved, we have the political will. So you have been extraordinary. I mean, part of the reason why we're still in the game is because of you. And part of the reason why more members on both sides of the aisle know about what SNAP really is and who it benefits is because of your efforts. So understand that you were heard during that last debate. And we're going to need to keep this message up until we get through this year. And I'm confident that if we can stick together, that we can prevail. We can push back some draconian cuts in this program, which will literally take the foods out of the mouths of millions of people. And so to everybody at PDA who's here, who's watching, you know, thank you. It's helpful sometimes to have wind at your back. And you are like a hurricane at my back. So, and at those of us who are fighting to protect this program. We just need to keep it up, and I'm going to be there. We're getting prepared for the next round of battle, and you know, some things are worth fighting for. This is worth fighting for, and so I'm just here to say thank you.
Thank you.
Now you're going to hear from a real champion.
Yeah, well, being from Massachusetts, and now that Ed's on his way to the Senate, I can say my two favorite members from Massachusetts. Thank you. Somebody out there who needs no introduction, those of you who don't not know, Mike Capuano, I still think he should have been in the Senate a long time ago, and now he's sitting on the fence yet again on another one, and maybe he'll be at our next governor, but time will tell. But right now, he's in the trenches fighting for us. He called me last week and asked what we were up to, and I shared with him the big fight for us right now is to get back focused on the single payer fight. We were just in Massachusetts at the IATSE convention where the National IATSE endorsed 676. The New York Federation of Labor just endorsed 676 again. We're putting it back on the table. It's the anniversary of Medicare, as you know. And we got the news this morning, as we announced before you got here. We're back on board and welcome to it means a lot to me. Thank you. Mike Capuano.
I didn't know I wasn't on board until I talked.
That's why we're here. Thank you.
I don't have any news you don't already know. I want to echo Jimmy's words, just say thank you. Look, America's doing great as long as you're a billionaire, as long as you don't need a mortgage, as long as you're not hungry, as long as you don't need an education. You know, if you don't need any of those things, you should be doing fine. But as Jimmy said, the people that don't have those things are on the verge of not having those things. They don't have a voice. I'm not against lobbyists, but those people don't have lobbyists. They have you. Hopefully they have me. And without us, there's nothing. Let's be serious. I don't know whether it's going to get better before it gets worse. I actually think it's probably not. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. I'm not even necessarily sure that that's a bad thing politically, because for me, I'm not in this for the short game. I'm not in this to win each and every fight I get into. As a matter of fact, lately, we don't win any fights, which is okay, I can count. But I still believe with every ounce of my soul that the hearts and minds of American people on each and every individual item is with us. I don't know why they have lost the connection, but they have. And our job is to reconnect them with the realities that, you know, Social Security is important. It did not come down on the tablets with Moses. And Medicare is in jeopardy. And healthcare is important. And nobody should go without healthcare in this country. And that people on the other side, I don't like to demonize them because they're not bad people. They just see the world significantly different than us. And for me, that means in order to get the people that I want to get to, honestly, I don't spend a whole lot of time talking to people in this room because you're already on board. I mean, it's like an echo chamber. We need to spend time talking to people who are not with us, not the complete opposite side, but the vast majority of Americans who don't understand how this all works, and don't understand why the issues we're pushing for are not just some esoteric ideological nonsense. They're real programs that matter to people in their daily lives. And they can be accomplished with very little pain. So for me, I spend most of my time trying to talk to those people. And they're hard to get hold of because they don't gather in one place. And when they do, they want to talk about sports, they want to talk about other things, and that's fine, I'll talk about that too. But when the time comes, we need to make sure that they understand that the things we're fighting for. A 30-year mortgage, the average person takes that for granted. They think it was always there, it'll always be there, it'll always be reasonably affordable, and everybody I know struggles to get there. But if we move that goalpost back, in my opinion, most of middle-class America will slowly disappear. I mean, they're already under threat now on wages. They're under threat now on not being able to educate their own kids. But if they can't build wealth through the ownership of a small home or a condo or whatever it's going to be, where's their hope for the future? So for me, explaining that to some degree is critically important. And even when we can't explain it, we have to win it. So, as some of these fights come on, the ones that Keats are talking about, are coming in the fall, there's some degree to me that says, go ahead, shut it down. I'm not for shutting it down. It's absolutely a stupid way to do government. It's a bad way to do politics. But we're the minority, they're majority. But when that happens, we need to be prepared to explain to people why and what's at stake. When it happens, the debt ceiling comes out. We need to be able to explain to people what's going on. The trade bills, let's be serious. The TPP, that's easy. But for some reason, some people still accept, and again, I don't mean people on the other side. I'm talking about the big, vast majority of people in the middle that don't go to sleep at night worrying about trade deals. But they go to sleep at night hoping that their kids have a job the next day and they have a future. They don't understand this, and they have to be explained thoughtfully, forcefully, that if we keep doing this, sure, there'll be some things that are cheaper in the world. But by the way, any trade deals we had with Bangladesh, did your shirts get cheaper? No. They got more expensive. Where'd the money go? Not to anybody I know. And did it really help the people in Bangladesh? Not from what I've seen. All that being said, I want to come by today mostly to say thank you for doing what you do, understanding full well that I wish I could sit here today and tell you, don't worry, victory is around the corner. I don't believe that. But I do think victory is within sight. And again, my message is not that I'm opposed to the Tea Party. I'm not opposed to them at all. I don't agree with them on anything, but I actually respect the fact that they have the wherewithal to get up off the couch and go do something about the vision they see. We need to inspire our people to get up off their couch to make sure that they're behind us on a numbers basis, because the numbers are with us. Every time these issues have been on the ballot, either directly or through candidates, we end up winning. But we also have to understand we need to talk their message, their language. And as we talk their language on each of these issues, who's going to argue against this? Who's going to say that Americans should go to bed hungry? Who's going to say that anybody in America, even in healthcare? My argument in healthcare, I was never arguing the details of healthcare. Very simple thing. If you don't believe that every American deserves healthcare, go to any emergency room you want. I don't care where. Any place in this country and sit there for an hour. And you decide which 20 or 30% of those people should be sent home. Which little lady with a broken hip, which kid broke his arm in Little League should be sent home because they don't have health insurance. And if you can do that, then you can legitimately stand up and look me in the face and say, I'm against healthcare for all. If you can't do that, you have an obligation to find a way to get there. And no American has ever answered me, say, yeah, I can do it. Those little kids with broken arms, the heck with them, I don't care. Nobody believes that. We need to talk their language, we need to be firm about it, and we need to bring all the issues we care about into their homes and into their lives in a way that they understand. I think we do it. Unfortunately, I think the other side is helping us do that. in a slowly but surely direct way with the sequester and now with the cuts that they're talking about. I mean, come on. Can you find anybody in America that actually believes that no one anywhere deserves food stamps? Come on. Nobody really believes that. The WIC program, literally taking food out of the mouths of infants. Literally. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating. It's not a figurative comment. I haven't found anybody who, first of all, knew that was happening, except the people that actually deliver the services. And second of all, nobody argues that point. So, as Jimmy said and as Keith said, I want to thank you for being with us. I want to thank you in many ways for being ahead of us. You know, Tim knows that, look, I can't know everything. I mean, even this healthcare law, I didn't know I wasn't on. Okay, why am I on? I don't know. Get screwed up somewhere along the line, put me on. It's easy. You need to help us stay on the straight and narrow, and you need to help us help you, because there are some of us who also see things not differently philosophically, but differently in the approach. And for me, the battle is not here. The battle is with people that are not here, and not the Tea Party. That's not the battle. I'm not going to change their mind. You know, my battle is with my typical union member who goes out on a regular basis and votes for some Republican. Because I don't know what they're doing. Maybe watching too much Fox News. I don't know what's going on. They're winnable. They're gettable. They agree with us on the substance of the issue. I think we can do it if we keep those messages straight and clear. You help us do that. I want to say thank you.
So that's the portion of our inside program. Now we're going to go to the outside. Inside, outside. You heard about the bill now. Now we're going to talk about street heat and what's going on coming up in September, as well as the letter drops. Again, a thank you to all of those that were out on the letter drops. We're going to first turn to the Robin Hood tax. We're lucky to have Michael Lighty with us again as part of our roundtable today. We're going to ask Michael to share with us specifically where the Robin Hood tax is in regards to the coalition, and most importantly, those of you who are not aware, plans come September. Michael Lighty, National Nurses United Robin Hood tax. Thank you, Michael. Welcome.
I guess we're standing, right?
Yeah, we're standing today.
Probably a lot of folks in the room know, what we're working on, what we're dealing with. The really exciting thing, as Congressman Ellison mentioned, is that there is, either because of the reality in people's lives or because the politics and the policy changed, a recognition that austerity doesn't work. Now, I think you could ask most working people in this country or around the world. It's pretty obvious that if you have less, you're not going to be doing better. All right, so now the G20 countries, the leadership of those countries have recognized that as well. And so with that change, with that political shift, we want to take advantage of it. And in September, we have the perfect opportunity to do that. And that is on September 17th, the anniversary of Occupy Wall Street. There are going to be, in over a dozen countries around the world, anti-austerity demonstrations led by nurses' unions that are a part of Global Nurses United, GNU. And that's a wildebeest you don't want to mess with, for those of you who know the reference. And National Nurses United is a part of that. And we have gotten together a group of organizations and allies in New York City to do a demonstration there on September 17th. And that includes a tie-in to the UN General Assembly session that opens that day. They're taking on the issue of a report on Millennial Development Goals, which doesn't mean a lot to most Americans, but is a hugely significant effort by the United Nations internationally to set goals that will eradicate global poverty, that will eradicate global hunger, and that will actually improve the quality of life for billions of people around the world. And that Millennial Development Goal project is going to be discussed at the UN. That's a great tie-in to work against austerity. We have a number of unions that are joining us. The Amalgamated Transit Union, the Transit Workers Union in New York, two of the largest unions in New York City, are part of that. Vocal New York, a leading AIDS, HIV activist organization, the New York State Nurses Association. We expect to have thousands of folks going from the United Nations to Bryant Park and on September 17th. So we're asking folks to join us. We are setting up local campaign committees throughout the country to work on the Robin Hood tax, because we're going to have to light a ground fire to win this effort. But of course, again, as Congressman Ellison said, the tax reform debate offers a window. And if we can have enough local activity, getting local city councils to pass resolutions, getting local elected officials to endorse the Robin Hood tax, HR 1579, to get more support among unions and union activists, we can create that groundswell locally. And those local campaigns are going to be crucial in our efforts. We're bringing together folks, and PDA is going to be a big part of it, an action conference at the end of October here, and Food and Water Watch and others are going to be joining us for that. An action conference on the Robin Hood tax, October 29th and 30th. We're going to hit the Hill to lobby on the issue of a financial transaction tax. One of the things that isn't often mentioned, but if any of you saw the recent press around the ownership of basic commodities by international banks, aluminum, the Goldman Sachs cornering the market on aluminum. What buried in that article was a reference to an accepted piece of research that said that $10 of every average fill-up at the gas station, $10 of the cost of that filling your gas tank, is a result of speculation in the price of oil. Up to a third of the price of a barrel of oil is directly related to commodity speculation. Why do they speculate in commodities? They speculate in commodities because it's so profitable to do so. And when these commodity markets were set up in the 30s, the whole purpose was actually to prevent speculation in the price of commodities. And that was the New Deal regulation that's been undone. The Robin Hood tax goes directly after that by placing a tax on that speculation activity that renders it very unprofitable, relative obviously to the margins that they make. And so the Robin Hood tax is a way to address the escalating commodity price. That issue of hunger, it's estimated that as many as 2 million people suffer from malnutrition that leads to death as a result of speculation in the price of food. Why do they speculate in the price of food? Again, because it's profitable at very small margins. The Robin Hood tax would eliminate that profit. So when we talk about having the money to pay for education, living wage jobs, that money can come from the $350 billion in property in Robin Hood tax. That's the beauty of what we're trying to do with the Robin Hood tax. Why my last pitch would be, it doesn't take away from the other work we're doing. It funds the other issues that we're working on. It answers the question, how do you pay for it? And we're going to pay for it one way or the other. We're going to pay for it by a huge worsening in the quality of life, or we're going to pay for it by taking money from those who have it on Wall Street, who are benefiting from this finance sector-driven economy. The promise that Congressman Ellison and Congressman McGovern and Capuano talked about of a better country can be realized through this tax on Wall Street and this tax on speculation. And we have opportunities. We have opportunities this fall. We got to get Senate co-sponsors. We got to get senators to introduce a Robin Hood tax bill like HR 1579. We've got to get new sponsors. PDA has done over 200 letter drops the last couple of months on each month on the Robin Hood tax. We've got to make it essential. It's part of HR 676. It's one of the key funding mechanisms for HR 676. It's one of the key funding mechanisms for Representative Conyers' full employment bill. It's one of the key funding mechanisms for other single-payer legislation. And so that's why we answer the question, how do we pay for it? By taxing Wall Street. I really appreciate being a part of PDA's event today, Tim, and all the work that we're going to get to do together locally and nationally and globally to take our country back from Wall Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Before we open up for questions, maybe for Michael, Laura, maybe you could again introduce yourself to the team. People that are listening, targeted members, as we said, we delivered 237 letters. We'll be back next month and continue. Just folks who are listening and may not be aware, who are those members that are on the fence or hopeful by next month? Are there any members you could let folks know as part of the letter drop that we're targeted or hopeful for? We've had the same discussion with Keith, just from your perspective as our person.
I don't have that list in front of me, Tim, but I'm happy to share it with you and communicate it out to your field.
That would be great. Again, Laura's role here on the Hill for us is to help us not just deliver the letters. The most important thing is delivering the letters that follow up and to make sure the co-sponsors, and we have a targeted number. So any questions, either Michael or Laura, related to Robinhood before we shift back over to our labor single payer fight? Again, if you could just introduce yourself and direct your question. Hi.
I'm Bronwyn Weissel. I have been with Occupy Faith DC, and so what I wanted to know is, do you guys want people to come up to New York for these events, or do you want people to organize a parallel event in Washington, or what?
Yeah, no, I should have mentioned that, so I appreciate that. We are doing some parallel events. It looks like we'll want to do one in Chicago. There's organizing being done in Michigan, hopefully in Detroit, which is obvious as to why. So I think, and we are going to do an event here on September 19th, a congressional briefing with the member of the European Parliament on the European FTT that Congressman Ellison mentioned earlier. So I think that it would be helpful to have satellite demonstrations on September 17th, because as I say, we are doing that internationally as well, and we are trying to do that in some US cities.
Thank you.
Len Mel. Hi. I wanted to ask this. I think what you're doing is fantastic and absolutely necessary. And it sort of reminds me of some of the things, of Roosevelt.
Exactly.
Recognizing that when there's a collapse, that Wall Street's in the middle of it,
right.
And finance is meant to create prosperity, and when it creates poverty and austerity, there's a problem. But he had a series of measures to go after finance, and I'm very much working on the financial transaction tax. But are there other measures, And there's also talk of reinstating Glass-Steagall.
Right.
Do you think, and the last thing I want to say is just, we're talking about people taking too much of the pie and trying to leave crumbs and diminish those crumbs. But if we're saying the financial transaction rightly tax will help the economy, but I think to really reach people in some way, we have to really say we can expand this pie and you can be part of it. And that comes with a broad base of financial measures. So I'm wondering what you think of the reinstating the Glass-Steagall, and if there are other things that should be done along with the financial transaction tax.
Well, I think that the short answer is yes, because we're not going to take the investment banks out of ownership of commodities only, say, for example, to take one issue, only through the financial transaction tax. I mean, the Glass-Steagall barrier between investment banking and commercial banking served a lot of purposes, one of which was to make sure they didn't own basic stuff that people need, like corn or aluminum or copper and so forth. And so you need that. I think that's true. On the other hand, the promise of the financial transaction tax, specifically the Robinhood tax version of it, is that it raises such a substantial amount of money, up to $350 billion a year, that you can actually produce a different kind of economy that is based upon living wage jobs, guaranteed health care, secure retirement, quality public education, good housing, that eliminates hunger and HIV/AIDS. I mean, you can eliminate HIV/AIDS in a generation with spending $10 billion a year, but for some reason we can't find that $10 billion. Here is a pot of money that you can get that $10 billion without taking it from someplace else. So that's the reason this proposal is different, because it raises much more, like you talk about the Buffett rule or upper income tax, increases. This is much, much larger than any of those in terms of the revenue it raises. And so it gets us out of the deficit paradigm. It gets us, there's a limit. Look at Dodd-Frank. And that's an attempt at regulation, right? Obviously, expansive regulation. Within 2 to 3 years after Dodd-Frank's enactment, they will, as Secretary of the Treasury Lou said, we will substantially implement the core of Dodd-Frank by the end of this year. Substantially implement the core. That's not all of Dodd-Frank. And there are parts of Dodd-Frank that are even being undone as other parts are being implemented. So that is the limit of a regulatory regime. Glass-Steagall is significant, but you start getting to these other things. Wall Street spends more on lobbyists in the regulatory process than they do in the legislative process. So there's a limit, and that's why the tax is so attractive.
So Tim, I do have that target list for you.
Just in
My
time.
device is cooperating.
Just so happens.
I'll say overall, members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Senate Finance Committee and House Ways and Means Committee are key targets. Members of the Joint Committee on Taxation are key targets. In addition, most members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus approved the CPC's budget, which contained a financial transaction tax earlier this year. So most members in the CPC have voted for a form of an FTT. Our highlighted targets are Representative Bass of California, Becerra of California, Bruce Braley of Iowa, Danny Davis of Illinois, Representative DeLauro of Connecticut, Representative Fudge in Ohio has not yet gotten on, Representative Garamendi, Representative Grayson, Representative Hahn of California, Hank Johnson of Georgia, Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson, John Lewis, a key member, senior leadership of Georgia, Representative Lowenthal, Representative Nadler, Representative Rangel, and Representative Tierney are the key ones. There's others, but those are some of the names that we are focused on in terms of adding to the co-sponsor list.
So leading the discussion today for those out there, Judy Hess and Dr. Bill Honeyman out in California, no pressure, but I heard 4 California members there alone that we need to get. So by the time we come back next month, our goal realistically with our next letter drop is hopefully to pick off non-violently 4 or 5 of those to bring them into the Robin Hood fold.
That'd be tremendous.
So before we leave, Michael and Laura, can you just, for folks that, it's hard to believe, but there just might be, folks that aren't aware of resources outside of PDA website and PDA, where can folks go? More information on Robin Hood, where would you direct them?
RobinHoodTax.org. RobinHoodTax.org is the main site. We have an expanding presence on Facebook. You can put in Robin Hood Tax in Facebook, and there's a number of...
Everybody should be liking.
That's right. Everyone should be liking. We're increasing the number of likes as we speak. You can also sign up for Robin Hood Tax on Twitter. We use the hashtag RHT, capital RHT, and obviously the nationalnursesunited.org.
Thank you, Michael and Laura, for the Robin Hood movement. We're going to shift gears now, and as we said, one of the goals last month was our fight on single-payer revenue. Ally today, who you met during introductions, you'll hear more from him in a moment. Before that, a regular for many of us at the round table, somebody who's been fighting the good fight, both inside labor, outside, and been part of our PDA team for some time. And I had the pleasure to spend the day with him yesterday, and he'll share with folks some of the good organizing that we did there, and that's Mark Dudzik from Labor for Single Payer. Mark, we're all yours.
Hello, everybody. So we heard today that the Affordable Care Act is under assault by the right wing. They're trying to defund it. They're trying to give it the death of 1,000 cuts. We've also been hearing from our labor allies that the Affordable Care Act has done little to reverse the trend of cost shifting onto the backs of working people, where workers are asked to assume more and more of the cost of health care, and in fact, in some situations, has actually accelerated the decline of health care, access to health care for working people. It's particularly true with vulnerable low-wage worker populations whose hours are being manipulated to take advantage of some loopholes in the bill, and of workers who have fought and sacrificed blood and money to build union-sponsored welfare funds that are the gold standard of health coverage for working people and that are now subject to some real challenges. So however you feel about the Affordable Care Act, and I certainly have a lot of reservations about it, it's pretty clear that the assault on the Affordable Care Act is coming from those who do not believe that health care is a fundamental and basic human right, and that who want to strengthen the treatment of health care as a commodity and a profit center on the backs of human beings. So that's sort of the dynamic. Now, apparently a lot of the sponsors of the Affordable Care Act and its proponents believe that the best way to defend against these assaults at this point is to chop off pieces of the act and throw it to the enemies to let them gnaw on it, and that may make them happy and leave us alone. We've seen that not work very well on the whole other big pieces of our social insurance model, and I would predict that it's probably not going to satisfy the right wing now. I mean, you saw how they manipulated the magnanimous extension of the employer mandate by the Obama administration to demand, well, okay, you can do that. How about giving us the rest of the stuff right now? So this is what's going to happen. We have a different approach. Our approach is we have to move onward to healthcare justice. We cannot circle the wagons around a flawed piece of legislation and say that the next 20 years is involved with defending this piece of legislation. Even if you want to defend it, you've got to move forward. And that's the challenge that we in Labor for Single Payer raise, particularly to the labor movement, because we think that they are the real game changer on this issue. And our allies and progressive Democrats and the healthcare justice movement are moving with us onward. Now, next week is the 48th anniversary of Medicare, which is a single-payer system, one of the historic achievements of the social insurance model, a real fundamental tie, and which is, by the way, under assault by the same forces that are assaulting healthcare justice. And the single-payer movement has always taken that week as an opportunity to celebrate that birthday and to kind of rally the forces to move onward. There's going to be a number of activities happening next week around the country. Healthcare Now is coordinating local actions. I think they're up to over 30 cities right now that there are local actions being planned. You can find out about them on healthcare-now.org, and they'll be constantly updating the list. Right here in DC, on July 31st, there's going to be a couple of events. First, from 11 to noon, right here in the Cannon Building, room 121, there's going to be a briefing with Dr. Jerry Friedman from the University of Massachusetts. Dr. Friedman is an economist and has just come out with a study of the impact of how to progressively finance single payer and the broader economic impact of doing so. And I think it'll really kind of shake some thinking up here in town, and it will be presented with the sponsorship of Congressman Conyers' office and is built around the HR 676. Later that day, there will be a press conference at the House Triangle. Joining that press conference will be Congressman Conyers, Senator Bernie Sanders, and we're hoping some other progressive leaders from both houses will join. Senator Sanders is getting ready to drop a single-payer bill in the Senate. We're not sure yet whether, we haven't gotten confirmation that it will be dropped by next week, but it will be dropped shortly. It's a very good bill. He put a bill in last session. This bill is even better. He did it alone last session, and I think we have a duty as progressives, and PDA has a duty to make sure that he doesn't walk alone in the Senate this session. And, he needs to be joined by some other senators. And the Senate, has a little bit more collegial rules than the House, and it's possible that you could actually develop a much more substantial discussion of single-payer issues in the Senate if we had a few more sponsors for a single-payer bill in the Senate. So that's a real opportunity. The House companion of the Sanders bill is the McDermott bill, H.R. 1200. We're hoping to talk to Congressman McDermott's folks about what their vision is on how to move that forward and to try to work with that and work in unison around all of these single-payer pieces of legislation. And we think that in addition to the incredible work that is being done by activists on a state level to try to take advantage of the innovation provisions of of the Affordable Care Act to innovate around state single-payer systems. In addition to that work, we think it's very important to have a national focus on single-payer as a way to unify our movement and to keep it moving forward. So we hope to work on this. We need to increase the sponsorship of all of those pieces of single-payer legislation, and we need to find ways to increase the visibility and keep it before the American people. So I hope you'll work with us on July 31st and thereafter. Thanks.
You heard earlier in the introductions, Dave, do you want to take a couple minutes real quick and just remind folks what you'll be up to as well? Thank you, Mark.
Well, I really appreciate you fitting me in. Didn't prepare any remarks, but I just want to, I'm new to Public Citizen. I've been there about 2 months, but really enjoying working with PDA and a whole bunch of other great groups on single payer to rebuild the momentum here in Washington, but also at the state level. Public Citizen just put out a report recently on single payer and the states and the difficulties that states will encounter as they try to create a single payer system under the Obamacare framework. We also provide some solutions. We don't give an opinion either way, but we talk about the challenges you'll have with ERISA, how you sort of integrate Medicare payments into having the state be the payor sort of for Medicare to providers. And I'm happy to share that with folks. That's on our website at citizen.org, but I can also send that around to the list with Tim there. Again, on July 31st, we're just really excited. We've been able to pull together this event, have a number of folks that have committed, including obviously Congressman Conyers and Senator Sanders. Congressman Grijalva will be there, and they're getting the word out to the Progressive Caucus. We talked to some of the folks that were here today, and they're hoping to make it. We'd love to have people come. We've got great signs, that we'll hold in the background at 1 p.m. there for single payer. Also, if you're free to do Hill meetings, we're going to hit every former co-sponsor of H.R. 676 that is not currently on the bill. We'll be hitting all their offices. We're going to hit freshman members that we think are good targets for the bill that are not yet on the bill, and we're going to go to some of those Senate offices that we think will be great targets for Senator Sanders' bill. And I think now that Congressman Markey is over there, and I'm just thrilled to have him there. And he's been a big single-payer supporter in the past, talked about it a lot during the campaign, so we hope we can get him engaged, and any help you can provide there is greatly appreciated. We've got our flyers for the July 31st event outside. I've also got my single-payer blog and the Royal Baby, which now has a name. It is George Alexander Lewis, so tweet that with the blog if you can. I'll leave some cards out there. Would love to meet y'all and appreciate the time.
You bet.
So let me ask Dave a question. So you're saying that the Royals use NHS?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The National Health System of UK is responsible for delivering the third in line to this one.
That's right. And what's amazing is that they got the creme de la creme care there, and the study's been done. This was in the Washington Post today. That it's basically about $15,000 to do that, and the average cost to deliver a baby here is $30,000. So what are we doing wrong?
As high as 50.
As high as 50.
Right.
So if they can do it for $15,000 for the Royals, I think we can do that here with single payer. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Dave. How about this for transition healthcare, not warfare? Many of our allies are working, as many of you know, the defense vote is going on. It has been going on this week. What we'd like to do, we're a little short-staffed, but we've got some of our favorites here, as well as another new face. Again, Dave, the purpose of the roundtable is to expand to make sure that we're building out not just PDA, but the larger progressive community. U.S. Action is with us today, too, has been working with us quite a bit on these efforts. We're going to allow them to introduce themselves. But before that, I wanted to just take some personal privilege and have Mark introduce himself to the team. Part of the work we do in PDAs, many of those who are watching today and are in the room, is through our issue organizing teams. Russell Green reached out to the environmental community here in the greater DC area. That's why we have some new faces. We're excited about that. And Mark is our contact person who will be taking this work to the issue organizing team. I want him to introduce himself. And then Miriam, who's been with us for some time, will introduce her next. Miriam, who's doing a lot of the great work over at IPS around, for many old-timers conversion, but the transfer of the military budget into green jobs and helping us begin to really beat our swords into plowshares. But first, Mark, if you could introduce yourself, a little bit of what the PDA team's up to, then we'll let Miriam take the floor. Thank you.
Like most PDA teams, we move from one issue to the other, but focus, obviously, the central feature is organizations, particularly as the U.S. is involved in it. And one of the things that's been really important to us when we think about how you can build stronger networks of people who can support those issues is those working people who are in fact would be effective, in fact would be successful. And that would be folks who would use jobs that are, that's industry-related jobs or other related jobs secondarily to that. And that's why we've been very excited to follow Miriam's work and hope that those things we can take forward is expanding, talking to folks who are not normally open to talking about the issue because they legitimately feel threatened. So we're delighted that you're working on it and glad that it's a PDA priority as well.
Thank you, Mark. Miriam, you want to take the floor and share with folks since we last saw you what you've been up to? I know you've been busy. Come on to the front here. You get the front of the class. Thank you. How many of you, is anybody in the room that was on the webcast or been on any of the webcasts that Miriam's been organizing? Those of you watching out there, if not, she'll share a little bit when the next ones are coming up. Miriam, thank you and welcome.
Thanks. So at the last session, I was talking about one victory that we've had recently, which is a bill that was passed in Connecticut creating a commission. The state of Connecticut is going to be examining how to diversify its overly defense-dependent economy. This is very exciting. It has members to the commission mandated to be appointed by the president of the state AFL-CIO and a whole range of actors. So this is something we need to be bird dogging, and we also need to be replicating it around the country. So I'm talking about this, and Congressman Ellison says we need to have a bill like that at the national level. Oh, okay. And so then met with his staffers and others, his colleagues, staffers for Congressman Conyers and several others, and they said, you need to draft something for this bill to create a national commission to look at diversification in our emerging post-war period.
Just so we don't get things done at the round table.
Well, so I sketched something out, and it's just a bunch of whereas clauses and therefore clauses, and I'll just tick off the topics of these clauses. The first being we're in the process of ending 2 wars, longest period of war. The economic recovery has failed to create enough good jobs. We need these resources invested in strengthening our economy at home. Defense dependency that has been created by these wars. Climate change, a big problem. Creating a low carbon economy can be the foundation for a strong new manufacturing and job space. So therefore, a commission is created to plan for the transition to a peacetime economy, emphasizing greenhouse gas reductions, and then all the different agencies that would be involved in this. Preparing a report concerning the transition to a peacetime economy, convene hearings from a broad range of experts and citizens to guide its deliberations, make recommendations for budgetary allocations to support the transition, strategies for the restoration of U.S. manufacturing base, coordination of economic development policy with public and private sources of capital, strategies for diversification or conversion, emphasis on low carbon economy, strategies for assisting defense-dependent communities to make the transition to an alternative economic base. And then a little money to fund this commission. So this was, as I say, a mandate from Congressman Ellison, so I'll be getting back together with his staffers to try to make this look like a bill. We also talked about the need for standalone legislation on defense transition assistance. That is, if we're going to get the defense cuts we need to provide help to the communities and the workers and the businesses that have become dependent on military production that we don't need. So I'm going to be working with those staffers to come up with some sort of framework for such a standalone bill. And then, the idea would be that pieces of it could then be, proposed to be put into other larger pieces of legislation, which is if anything ever gets done in this building in terms of passing laws, in terms of laws that we need, that's usually the way it's done. So in terms of activism for PDA members and others on this issue, there's a number of options. I'm a little behind on producing a series of fact sheets, really breaking this down and onto one page for activists, and then another one that would be something activists could then give to members of Congress. This is what defense transition assistance is, why it's needed, what the pieces are, and then using that as a kind of a primer for action. We also need to replicate the Connecticut bill, so that's another kind of activism that I'm hoping PDA members can get involved in. Getting in touch with me, I'm happy to advise and to put us all in touch with each other to figure out how to get this going in other places. And then finally, I'll make another pitch for the need for local activists in local communities that are defense dependent to really show that there is a need for these federal programs and that it is possible to make to do planning to make a transition to an alternative economic base, to take the place of the manufacturing base in war production that is going to be diminishing in future years, and communities, often defense-dependent unions will say very reasonably, it's all very well to think of a nice green job over here. This is the job I have. I'm not giving it up. So the argument we make is, absolutely, you're going to be trying to protect that job, but that doesn't mean you can't look at a plan B, and you really do need to be looking at a plan B, and so this is how to do it. So I think I will be coming back next month, and I hope that I can have some progress to report on these on this bill that Congressman Ellison is particularly interested in, and also on the standalone bill on defense transition assistance.
Thank you. This is, in addition to the Robin Hood and making sure we have single payer by the end of the year, some of the most exciting work we're doing in PD, and I hope those of you who are hearing about it for the first time on the webcast get in touch with Mark and the issue organizing team. This is an issue of real importance to us, and to making those connections, and to thank Miriam for that work. As I said, we have some new friends today in the audience who we've been working with. Some of the frustration coming off of the president's re-election with many of us inside the party was if you remember going all the way back when we were doing the fighting on Bull Simpson, was to expand the debate and moving away from austerity back to prosperity, and to put the military budget into the formula. And the frustration we had until Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, through that work of that commission, began the discussion on cutting the military budget. And after the re-election of the president, many of us in the progressive movement felt this was the time then that the progressive movement as a whole would embrace cutting military spending. And unfortunately, even some of our progressive allies, both within labor and within our own movement, when the first call went out, were not including cutting Pentagon waste into that formula. And over the course of the last year, there's been some great work done by Joe Cumberford at the National Priorities Project, Judith LeBlanc at Peace Action, PDA as part of that dialogue, to expand the debate to include military spending. And one of the groups that we've moved, beginning with the retreat that began for some of us right after the election outside of New York or inside New York, a retreat that Joe and Judith put together, was with U.S. Action, and to have that discussion, to expand the debate, to make sure that we included cutting military spending, military waste into that. And U.S. Action has been very much part of that, and they're here today, and I want them to introduce themselves and share with us some of the work they're doing. Russ?
Again, I'm Ross Wallen with U.S. Action. Our staff point lead on Pentagon spending work is Barbara Helmick, and she's not here right now, so if you want to connect with her on this, I've got plenty of cards that I can pass along. I noted at the beginning of the meeting our second sign-on letter to Congress this year. This one is not as strong as our last letter, which was explicitly about cutting Pentagon spending up to around $500 billion a year. This one is simply about not increasing Pentagon spending in an effort to bring on more coalition allies who, for various reasons that Tim noted, aren't yet with us or where we would like them to be within the progressive community and within the labor movement. And we're doing a lot of work with Miriam and Stephen Miles and the folks at the other campaign in Darcy Scott Martin to work on this. And right now, some exciting stuff that we've got going on, and Stephen would mention this if he were here, but there's a lot of effort around planning to end the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. The lifetime cost of $1.5 trillion, just a huge chunk, the largest single item in the Pentagon budget for this fiscal year, and just a huge important item that is the symbol of Pentagon waste. Right now we've got a petition up on Move On Progressive Partner Tool. Win Without War has a similar, exact same petition up on Frito's petition tool. So that's the start of this conversation online. We'll be building for a long-term campaign. And I'm sure that Barbara or I or Stephen will be able to share a lot more in the coming months as this campaign can come together. And that's about all I've got. Right now we're focused on internally on online activism for our national membership. We've got about 250,000 active members online, and just national organizing with these kind of sign letters and following up with the congressional staff and making sure that they've seen the letter and know that there's a broad base of support. Just to highlight some of the folks that are on here, the 3 largest labor unions in the country, AFSCME, SEIU, and NEA are all on this letter. The National Women's Law Center, the National Council of Raza, in addition to many of the familiar allies in the peace movement and anti-war movement, and some green groups as well, and Greenpeace. And so lots of good national coalition organizing going on, and continue to work on that, and look forward to doing that with all of you.
Thank you. We'd hoped that scheduling, that Congressman Grayson was going to be able to join us, and unfortunately scheduling is not going to allow him, it looks like, to make it. But Beth Stoller, who's here from the Congressman's office, we wanted to ask him if he could, we heard a little bit already about the looming, for many of us, we knew about the looming fight in regards to the TPP that we heard today from Congressman Ellison. So if you remember, Laura Wallach was with us at Progressive Central in January, so we knew what was coming, and we've been doing a lot of work on that. Our economic and Justice IoT has been doing a lot of work on that. But what some of us may not know about is what's going on with the Atlantic and Pacific trade agreements, and Congressman Grayson has been out front on that. And I wonder, Matt, if you could take a couple minutes, it looks like he's not going to be able to make it, if you could just update for folks a little bit of what's going on there and how we can help you in the office and what you're up to over there.
Sure, thank you. So, my boss sends his regards. He's on the floor voting a series of votes right now. So, the Trans-Pacific Partnership and then the new EU partnership called, it's called TTIP, or TAFTA, continue to rhyme with NAFTA, right? There's a lot of rumors floating around about both trade agreements. Michael Froman, who he was a Treasury official, and he was just confirmed as U.S. Trade Representative. I believe it was last month or a couple of weeks ago. It was fairly recent. And they're trying to close out negotiations for the Trans-Pacific Partnership this year. But because Japan was relatively recently brought in, and that's a very large economy, there's a lot of work yet to be done. The European agreement is being stymied for a couple of reasons. Two, really. One, the surveillance revelations have caused some problems regarding exchange of data. That was going to be a big part of the agreement, and may still be a big part of the agreement. And then two, everyone's shocked that every spying agency in the world is collaborating with spying. Just shocked. And for those of you who don't know, privacy laws in the U.S. and Europe are different, so there are different laws that both sets of governments ignore. The U.S. commercial privacy is relatively unprotected, In Europe, there are much stronger provisions for privacy protections. I'm talking on the commercial side, because this is a trade agreement. And so one of the big problems that various corporations have is they can't move data back and forth between their either subsidiaries or various corporate entities, or just the same company operating in both in both regions. And they wanted to fix that in the EU trade agreement. We'll see where that goes. There was a lot of interest particularly in the tech side, because the EU agreement will have a lot of significant parts of how the internet is governed. This is the first big agreement where the internet content companies are a big part of it. The basic framework for these agreements was constructed with NAFTA and the internet. There weren't big internet content companies then. So, it's a really interesting problem. The second big holdup in the EU trade agreement is banking regulations. So the Europeans, along with the American banks, are pressing very hard to include provisions in the agreement which would essentially break Dodd-Frank, break American banking regulations, and the administration is resisting that. So last week, Michel Barnier, who's the European Financial Services Authority chairman, was here at a Brookings event. There were some European parliamentarians, and they're trying to put pressure on U.S. regulators and U.S. trade negotiators. So that's the update about the European agreement. Now, broadly, to do both of these, and then Europe is mad about genetically modified foods. They don't want to import them. Obviously, Monsanto and various entities here do want to bring GMOs to Europe. So this is a very tricky agreement to actually get done. Now, to get both of these done, you need fast track authority. Fast track authority would be delegating the negotiating authority that Congress has in the Constitution to the executive branch, where they can then negotiate, sign the agreement, and send to Congress with an up or down vote, no marking up, no filibusters, and the enabling legislation, which would change our laws, would just automatically go through. And there was a movement spearheaded largely by public citizen and the unions against fast track authority. It's something that unites parts of the right with the left. Ron Paul was really against fast track authority because of the constitutional issues and constitutional questions. So, we don't know what the timing is, or at least I don't know what the timing is on fast track. No one from the Ways and Means Subcommittee, I don't think a lot of progressive caucus members are on it. And then the Senate, I think it's the Finance Committee, not Bank Finance. They both want fast track authority to be marked up. I don't know if the administration's requested it. It is something that Michael Froman, the new USTR rep, has said they're working out. It's all very opaque, the actual process. Any member is free to read the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but they have to, which is something that Congressman Grayson actually read. The way that you do it is you talk to USTR, they set up an appointment, and what they do is they bring you a trade agreement, whatever chapters you want. There's a bunch of different chapters. And they'll bring you a version of it, and where they're still negotiating, so where you have countries proposing different elements, they'll put it in brackets. So this is the controversial section, and then they'll say this is what one group of countries want, this is what another group of countries want. But they won't, and that's called the composite bracketed text. On the one that they bring to show the congressman, they won't actually list the countries that want which provision, but they'll bring a negotiator in there to tell you which means it's called the scrub. They'll bring a negotiator. And what this has the effect of doing is it has the effect of making the scheduling very difficult. Because then in order to read the text, rather than just bringing over text, you have to read the text and have the negotiator in the room to explain to you which country is requesting which provision. So you can technically read it if you're a member of Congress. The scheduling is laborious. And I would encourage more members to request that from the USTR. The congressman has an appointment with USTR on the 31st, and he is going to make it, he's going to invite other Progressive Caucus members, anybody who wants to come to look at he's asking for 4 chapters, and the USTR will be there with the negotiators, so hopefully it will be like more members will come and be able to talk about it. There's no staff in the room. You can have ways and means to be staff if you want. So that's where things are. I haven't been here for one of these fast track fights, but the fight is going to be around fast track. Clearly these are unpopular. Sorry.
I said it's coming.
It's coming. And I think the big issue, the big struggle here is actually getting media coverage. It's very unpopular. These agreements are very unpopular when anybody hears about them. But people don't hear about them very often. And the reason they don't hear about them very often is because the media doesn't cover them. One of the interesting things is that the media conglomerates that own most of our television stations are involved in one form or another through trade associations or directly, are actually helping to negotiate these agreements. So there's a direct conflict of interest, and so that's something that actually there's opportunities to leverage that going forward. So yeah, so this, I think we're in, we've done some good organizing. I know the congressman is fired up about it. He asked for observational status for the initial round of the EU trade agreement negotiation, which was a couple weeks ago, and the USTR said no. But it's good every time they say no. That's it's good that they ask for these things. And then the corporations, because the USTR doesn't have written guidelines about who sees what. It's not clear, how much various corporate entities are seeing these agreements. It came out during one of the Q&A sessions that even though this was supposed to be the initial round, there was already draft text for the EU agreement. I don't know, one of the corporate advisors let that slip during a public Q&A session. So, it's rigged. Shocker. But these are very unpopular agreements. And there's one provision that is particularly interesting in light of immigration, which is one provision of NAFTA, which people didn't notice, is there is a provision for short-term immigration for business executives in Canada, Mexico, and the United States. There is I think it's called the temporary entry chapter in the TPP, and then we'll see one of the things the lobbyists were asking for in the EU agreement is a similar temporary entry chapter, which would allow people in various corporations that have subsidiaries or that operate across multiple sovereign entities to just essentially bypass the existing immigration system so that they could have short-term, like if you have scientists who's working for GE in Europe, they can come to America for a couple months or whatever. So it's like an interesting, bypassing of the regular immigration system for the gold-plated corporate immigration system. But we don't have, we haven't looked at the short-term or the temporary entry chapter. So we're not sure what it says. But, I can't look at it. The congressman hasn't looked at it. But it's something although weirdly, I can ask USTR questions, which they will then they will sort of answer. Anyway, that's an update. I think we're in pretty good shape. The freshmen are holding together against fast track. They're very concerned. The EU one is going to be really hard.
Thanks, Matt. And we do have before we end today, we've got a nice tape, Congressman Grayson, that he shared with us at our Progressive Central. We're going to end today on the live stream. So if not in person, we'll see Congressman Grayson before we wrap it up. The other IoT that's been extremely busy that we want to close out, again, thank everybody for your patience and then hear from one of our last guests, and we're almost there. But the other IoT that many of you have been aware of last week, we had a great email blast, has been through the leadership of Andrea. Many of you know Andrea through her work at PDA at the national level as helping with not only with her state work in Virginia, but as part of the national team. She helps oversee 2 of our issue organizing teams, mass incarcerations, as well as the...
Never ratified. So when you were working with the constitutional amendment, not only do you need to get it through Congress, have the president sign it, but right now, because we have 50 states, 38 states must ratify. The Equal Rights Amendment came up short by 3 states. And when it originally passed in 1972, there was a ratification deadline that was put on the Equal Rights Amendment, not in the body of the amendment itself, but basically in the preamble, think cover page. And what happened was there was an extension, but we were never able to get the 3 additional states. There are currently 15 states that are currently unratified. What we are seeking to do in the ERA 3-state team is amendment, which nobody ever noticed or heard of, because this was an amendment that had lain dormant for 203 years. They found that amendment, the Congressional Pay Raise Amendment, otherwise known as the Madison Amendment, and they got the additional required states, and the 27th Amendment to our Constitution became sort of a stealth amendment. Well, what we're looking at is if we already have legal precedent where we can take an amendment and we can then go back and add the ratified states, and the existing states that were ratified were not allowed to rescind. You know, it's kind of like virginity. Once it's gone and once you've done it, you don't get to go back and say you didn't. So we're basically saying we want our 35 states to stand. We're looking to get 3 more. Illinois is an unratified state. So the folks in Illinois, we will be calling on you and working on you to get you to sign on to this bill. Our legislation dropped on the 9th of May. In the Senate, it was dropped jointly by Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland, a Democrat, and Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois, a Republican. Currently, we have 29 members of the Senate that are on this legislation, and when Ed Markey is fully seated, since he was on in the House, we know that Senator Markey will then become our 30th sponsor. In the House, we currently have 81 House members that are co-sponsors, and I am here today with Desiree Jordan of New York. We are visiting the New York delegation, so I am positive that today we are probably going to get at least 3 more sponsors. So we are looking at having 100 sponsors on this legislation by the end of September. That is our goal. And again, remember, we need 218 to pass. We are going to get this thing through. Oh, all right. Desiree reminded me that we were just at the NOW convention. That was in Chicago on the 5th through the 7th of July. And in the NOW convention, our team successfully passed a resolution that called on NOW to be very vigorous in support of the 3-state strategy, and there has always been the reintroduction of the Equal Rights Amendment and also the CEDAW, International Women's Treaty. What we ask the folks at NOW to do is that the Political Action Committee, when they are scoring candidates, are going to require support on both of the versions of the Equal Rights Amendment, and if you are in the Senate, then also support of the Senate Treaty.
Thank you, Andrea. We are closing in on our deadline at 3 o'clock that we promised everybody, but again, quick updates from folks. Alex Lawson, who many of you know, has been with us from the beginning on our Social Security fight. No surrender, no retreat on the Social Security fight. We thank Congressman Ellison and Mark Tucano on their letter on no retreat. Molly's here today on behalf of our Social Security team. Molly, you want to give us a quick update from what's going on and what we can be expecting coming out of your neck of the woods?
Definitely. So Molly Taxfield with Social Security Works, as was just saying here for Ellison. And so we are doing a lot of work just pushing expansion bills, both in the House and the Senate. This includes resolutions from Senator Harkin as well as Representative Cicilline. And the Harkin bill, expanding Social Security benefits. And Congresswoman Linda Sanchez will be introducing a companion to the Harkin bill in probably after the August recess. Obviously, there are only a couple of days until the August recess as of right now. But we're really just working on pushing expansion benefits, and we've been working with a good number of our folks from our coalition. So we've had a lot of help in this, and we appreciate everyone's help.
Thanks, Molly. The strength of the roundtable is our abilities to continue to build out and to bring our progressive allies in. And Emily, who's here, as I said, as a result of the work of our issue organizing team, that's been doing a lot of our global climate and a lot of our work on the carbon tax, is here. Emily's here, as we said earlier, on behalf of the Food and Water Watch, and we're expanding, and they've been doing some excellent work, as many of you know, across the country on the fracking and other issues. We wanted to recognize Emily and give her a chance to share with us what you're up to, and welcome.
So we are now working with a national coalition called Americans Against Fracking, which many of our partners here in the room, including PDA, National Nurses United, Move On, Credo, as well as 350 and other, the environmental organizations, Greenpeace. We are working right now on a campaign targeting the Obama administration, actually, in light of his recent speech on climate change, which we all applauded and were really excited to see him taking steps forward. Unfortunately, was pretty laudatory of natural gas, which we can only get through fracking, as well as domestic and oil and gas production. And we're really concerned about this as not only because of the environmental effects, but it actually ties into so many of the issues we've seen here. Right now, there's plans to start exporting the gas overseas. There's a lot of speculation involved. There's a lot of the same players, a lot of money and politics driving all of this. So it really cuts across a lot of the issues we've talked about right now. But regardless, the Bureau of Land Management currently is put out a set of rules for fracking on federal and Indian lands. So these are public lands where we're doing a lot of drilling and fracking for oil and gas right now. And the rules over the past year have actually been weakened under a tremendous amount of pressure from the oil and gas industry. And so Americans Against Fracking is working on a campaign right now to get 250,000 comments into the Bureau of Land Management and the Obama administration calling for stopping of fracking on our public land. And we're calling this campaign "This Land Is Your Land." And we have a lot of allies who are taking part in sending out email blasts to generate comments that we plan to deliver on August 22nd. And it will be preceded by a call-in day to the administration on August 21st as well. So that's a big campaign. Hopefully you'll be receiving emails, probably multiple, many of you, since you're probably on multiple lists. And we really would appreciate all the support we get from people. There are hard petitions if you prefer, signing people up, in your community and you can fax them in, and we'll be sure they're included in the delivery. And please tell people about it and join the campaign. We feel like we need to make sure that the administration is really hearing from the grassroots on this issue, because we've seen so many bad decisions from across the agencies on it, and this is about climate change.
Thanks, Emily. How about this for on time? Not bad for a bunch of progressives. We promised a 3 o'clock send-off. I want to just take if I could, a minute of just personal privilege to thank all of you for your patience today. I think we covered a lot of material, and to have 3 members of Congress take time to be with us, as well as our first webcast that we've ever done before. And again, to thank We Are Radio for acting up for us today. We have numbers, we've heard anywhere from 200 or so folks that dropped in throughout the day. So for our first effort, I think it's pretty impressive. Again, I want to thank those of you who are veterans of the Roundtable and those of you who are new. We will continue to gather as a movement, not only here in Washington, but more importantly out in the streets, and to have new allies here today. We want to thank you. We hope August 21st, those of you who are watching, those of you that are here are committed to take your letters back to your members of Congress. Connor gets his vacation now. We thank Connor for all the work. We're going to send him off tomorrow and he gets a week. But Connor, when you get back, we're going to break 300 in August with everybody's help here. So again, on behalf of the National PDA team, I want to thank everybody for taking the time today. The strength, as we often say in our movement, is never underestimate a small group of dedicated people. And those of you who have returned to continue in that effort, and those of you who are new to us, welcome to the PDA community. We are nothing more than a reflection of what we believe is a growing progressive movement. As Congressman Ellison indicated, and through the passion of Congressman Jim McGovern, working together, we can prevent bad things from happening, but more importantly, we can make good things happen. So we look for you for that leadership, and thank you. Visit the website if you haven't already. That's our Blade commercial, pdamerica.org. If you're still on streaming, we've got a nice little video to end on with Congressman Grayson, and those of you that are in the room, please take time to visit before we take off. And if you are watching today, last one, 4:15 on the Hartman Show, Tom Hartman will be doing a shout out for PDA there, and we'll be guesting over there as well. So again, thanks to everybody. Before you leave, make sure you exchange the cards. It's not a true DC meeting unless cards are exchanged and phone numbers are done. Thank you for being part of the day.
How are you?
Right on time.
Yeah.
There is no one else that can speak for you the way that the PDA does. There's no other organization that fills this niche. And you know, you're watching today, you all are here today, because you're good people. You're people who care about what's right, you care about your neighbors, you care about people in need. You care about each other, and that makes you special in a way. Everyone in this room is here today because of that reason. If you were here today to just give some latitude to that spark within you of empathy, that thing that makes you actually different from the soulless, selfish people on the other side, the thing that makes you see somebody in need and say, gee, I wish I could help, then you're part of the PDA. And you need to support the PDA so the PDA can go out day in and day out and do the things that you're too busy to do for yourself. There really is no alternative because we need a little bit of cash just to keep this thing going. You know, just in order to be able to pay the email bill turns out to be an expensive thing. In our campaign, it's a couple of $1,000s each month. So there is a sort of a practical need for your $20, your $25, your $50, whatever it might be. It's unavoidable. It's the cost of doing the business of America, the cost of doing the business of what's right, what's good. And that's why you need to contribute to the PDA. So go to pdamerica.org and make your contribution. You know, it's that simple. You have to put your money where our mouths are. There is no one else that can speak for you the way that the PDA does. There's no other organization that fills this niche. And you know, you're watching today, you all are here today, because you're good people. You're people who care about what's right, you care about your neighbors, you care about people in need, you care about each other, and that makes you special in a way. Everyone in this room is here today because of that reason. If you were here today to just give some latitude to that spark within you of empathy, that thing that makes you actually different from the soulless, selfish people on the other side, the thing that makes you see somebody in need and say, gee, I wish I could help, then you're part of the PDA. And you need to support the PDA so the PDA can go out day in and day out and do the things that you're too busy to do for yourself. There really is no alternative because we need a little bit of cash just to keep this thing going. You know, just in order to be able to pay the email bill turns out to be an expensive thing. In our campaign, it's a couple of $1,000s each month. So there is a sort of a practical need for your $20, your $25, your $50, whatever it might be. It's unavoidable. It's the cost of doing the business of America, the cost of doing the business of what's right, what's good. And that's why you need to contribute to the PDA. So,
Alan,
go to pdamerica.org and make your contribution.